Hi, and welcome back. I'm William Wesley. I'm a financial coach, actually full life balance financial coach. And this is, I think, the third or fourth in this series of financial coaching sessions. So we're doing these little vignettes just to talk about some key things that folks have been asking me for years. Quick background. I've been in the financial services industry over 20 plus years. I've been an investment advisor, a bank branch manager. I've also taught at the university level, and I've been a regional investor education manager. Also, over the last couple of years, I've done over 2,500 coaching sessions. So our first session, we talked about budget, some of the key components there, because that's job one. If you're building your financial future, the most important thing you can do is one, have a budget, two, live within your means, and three, begin to build an emergency fund. Then we spent a few moments on credit, and we talked about some of the key things, like what's the FICO score, what is it made up of, what happens in terms of getting your credit report, and how do you go through it and make sure everything is there, and how to dispute it. We did that in the second video. I also covered a few other things there. Today, we're going to talk about credit. This is part two of our credit series, two of two, and there's several things that we couldn't put in the last session, but it just made it too long. One is this idea of statute of limitations in terms of credit card or any debt. Another is the idea or the keys differences between a soft inquiry on your credit and a hard inquiry. And then we're going to spend some time talking about credit restoration. How do you rebuild credit if you've had a situation? And time permitting, we may cover a couple of other things too. So let's start with hard and soft inquiries. Now, a soft inquiry in terms of your credit score is basically you going to Credit Karma or going to annualcreditreport.com. At Credit Karma, you get your credit score. Annualcreditreport.com, that's where you can get your credit report. These are inquiries, but they don't ding your credit score because it's you just checking your information. Other types of soft inquiries, let's say you have a Visa card or something, and Visa has a certain limit on your card, and you've been paying on a regular basis, and over time, Visa may take a snapshot of you, do a soft inquiry to see where things are, because they may be considering raising your credit limit. That's a soft inquiry. It does not ding your credit score. Now, what's a hard inquiry? A hard inquiry is when you actively pursue credit. So you go to the dealer and try to buy a car. That's going to be a hard inquiry on your credit report. A hard inquiry is also when you try to buy a house, try to get a credit card, any activity where you're soliciting credit. Now, I've had questions around, sometimes people send you these notices in the mail saying, hey, you've been approved for $5,000 for this card. That's still a soft inquiry. But it could become hard. How? You fill out the application and send it in. Now you're saying, I want this credit. So now instead of a soft inquiry where they're just sending stuff at you and see if you bite, if you do bite and you sign the application and send it in, you're applying for credit. So now it's a hard inquiry. And hard inquiries stay on your credit report for a number of years, actually a couple of years. And it's not a big deal as long as you're not always applying for credit. So periodically, we may need credit and we may apply for a card. And just know that that does ding you a little bit, as long as you're going out every weekend trying to buy a car and being turned down every time. Okay, so that's hard and soft inquiries. Soft inquiries do not negatively affect or positively affect your credit score. Hard inquiries will ding the score, and the more hard inquiries, the more dings, and they stay on your report for a couple of years. Okay, so that's hard and soft inquiries. Talk a little bit about late payments. One late payment will stay on your credit report for 7 years. One late payment will stay on your credit report for 7 years. And you want to make sure you're aware of that. So the key is to do everything possible to make sure you make your payments on time, because that's, by the way, the biggest factor in the calculation of your credit score. Okay, now there's this other concept called statute of limitations. And the statute of limitations is not a way that you would want to manage your credit, but the statute of limitations says if you owe someone some money, in this case, a credit card company, and you're late and then you just haven't paid and it's been a certain period of time, after 7 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending on your state and depending on exactly the type of loan you've taken out or credit cards you've taken out or whatever the debt was, that creditor becomes time barred. And what that simply means is after a certain point, they cannot take you to court. You still owe the debt. You still should pay the debt, but they can't take you to court. So if you haven't paid on something and it's on your credit report and it's almost, depending on the state, so you can check and find out how it sits in terms of your state. But if you don't make that payment and then they become time barred, they can't take you to court. So you still owe them money, but they can't take you to court. So you may even want to reach out and say, okay, let's just get this whole thing off my credit report. They cannot take me to court, so maybe I make an offer. So I owe them 7, maybe I offer them 3. And by the way, if you do something like that and they accept the 3, just know that the remaining 4 that you owed is now considered income. So at the end of the year, you're going to get a 1099 that says you received $4,000 from Visa or whoever the credit card was in. Okay? Now, let's spend a few moments on credit restoration. So you've had a problem, a financial curveball, a pandemic, you lost your job, you weren't able to make your payments. A couple of years ago, there was a 34-day government shutdown, and so folks fell behind on some of their things. The good thing about credit is this. It moves forward, just like life moves forward. So if we have a bad incident or we missed a payment or something, and that happened a few years ago, if we can isolate that in terms of the timeline, and what I mean by that is this. Let's say we missed a payment in June of 2018. And let's say since then we have not missed another payment. Then that one missed payment becomes a one-off. It becomes something that happened, and yes, things happen. But if it's not a pattern, your credit score will continue to build because that can be identified as, whoops, a mistake, as opposed to I did it in June, then I did it again in August, then I did it again in January of the next year. Okay, that's a pattern of missing payments. So your credit report, your credit score is going to ding and continue to go down. But if it was one incident or a couple of incidents, but it was 4 years ago because you lost your job or something and you had a couple of months where you couldn't make the payments, as long as we can identify that as a point in time where we had the problem, then over time, the further we get from that moment, the better our credit score is. And it shows a pattern of that was a mistake and now we're doing fine. Okay, so that's one thing in terms of the time. The other thing is, okay, what are my steps? How do I rebuild credit? Well, the most important thing you can do is make your payments on time. Period. Past that, let's say if you had to do bankruptcy and now you're trying to get back in the credit game, or you're a new person trying to get into credit. Well, here's some of the things you can do. One, you can get a secured card, and that's where you go to a Visa or your bank and say, I'd like to open a credit card. And you apply for it. If they turn you down, then you ask for a secured card. And the secured card says you put up $500 or $1,000 as a down payment or a trust account for the credit card. In other words, that becomes your limit. That $1,000 you now put in the bank becomes your credit limit, and you use that as your backup. So the story is, in terms of building credit, charge something. Tank of gas, 1 tank of gas, charge it on the card and pay it off the next month. And then do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And you'll see your credit will begin to build. And again, you've had a problem. If you continue to do this, you can rebuild. Also, there's a credit builder loan where you can actually go to a bank and borrow the money and take out a loan to build credit. You basically take the money technically, but put it right back in the bank, and then you make payments on it. So, and then it shows this history of building. So the most important thing is 1, not missing payments, 2, being consistent with your payment history, and 3, just making sure you understand hard inquiries and soft inquiries and how these things can affect the score. So quick summary in terms of your FICO score, 35% of your FICO score is based on your payment history. 30% is based on credit utilization. How much available credit are you using? 15% is based on how long you've had credit length of time, history. Another 10% is based on the types of credit, like revolving credit, installment credit, or secured credit. Secured, by the way, is just backed by a physical object like your house or your car. That's secured credit. And then the last part is the types in terms of the newness of credit. So we've covered a few things. We talked about statute of limitations. We talked about credit restoration. We talked about a hard and soft inquiry. And what we want to do is bring to you these types of sessions. I want you to subscribe, first of all, to this channel if you think this is valuable to you and your friends. Secondly, share it with your friends and family. I mean, I know a lot, you know a lot, but no one knows everything. So maybe I've shared something that makes sense for you. Thirdly, make comments. Have you had credit problems? Have you had credit challenges? What did you do to solve it? How is your credit? What are some tips that you can share with other folks? Again, I've been William Wesley, and I wish you to be well, work smart, have fun, and live better every day. See you next time.